because once he looked in my eyes, all of a sudden from the floor through my feet, I felt this fire and this electricity go through me, and I couldn't handle it. I just started to cry, and I could not stop crying.
This is Touched by Heaven. Everyday encounters with God. Those moments when heaven and earth collide and we see God. We see His hand reaching out to us, attempting to get our attention, inviting us into a closer relationship. Here we share stories of encounter with angels, divine intervention, prophetic dreams, near-death experiences, big and little God incidents. I am your host, Trapper Jack. So glad you're here. Got a good one for you, another good one, here at episode 68 of the Touched by Heaven podcast. Now, when you get those wacko dreams, you wake up from a dream going, what the heck is that? It's supposed to symbolize something. What? There was a goat and it was standing on my head, then it morphs into a stork and then does this jump off my head and does a half gainer with a double twist into an open Cuisinart. So I hit the puree button and it's like, what is this? What did it mean? What did it mean? Well, I've got a dream for you, and I wouldn't tell you this dream other than you're in it. So I thought you might want to hear the dream that you're in, okay? Okay, so here we go. And the symbolism. Catch the symbolism. I have just fallen out the bomb bay doors of a B-52 bomber, and I am plummeting to earth. And I'm surrounded by bombs. I see bombs in front of me, bombs below me, bombs above me, and I am aware that we are bombing the Nazis, Nazi Germany. And I'm in like those World War II films you see, and you'll see B-52s over enemy territory and that big long stream of bombs falling out of them. I'm in that stream, right? I'm in that stream. So then I wake up, and I'm always looking for symbolism now. I'm always like, okay, does God have a message in this? Yeah, this one's pretty easy actually. Nazi Germany, evil, right? I mean, just pure evil. And so that represents what? That represents evil in this world, the devil, the ruler of this world, if you will, as Jesus called the devil and his minions. So that's evil. And then I'm a bomb. I'm in the stream. I'm a bomb. You're a bomb. When we follow Christ, we're bombs. When we're following commandments and loving and forgiving and doing Christian things, as they say, and let's see what else, and evangelizing, it's all part of being bombs against the ruler of this world. When we are impacting, we're exploding, we're impacting on his influence in this world. So there's your symbolism right there, and I'm happy with that. Okay, I'm a bomb, you're a bomb, this is great. We keep doing our work, we're bombs, beautiful. When we do these things and die believers in Christ and all that. Okay, and I think that's about it. Nope, God wasn't done yet. A couple of nights later, my wife and I were at a couples event kind of in the back of a restaurant. There were about 30 couples, 60 people, I'm thinking. And we're there with an organization called Marriages of Grace. And our guest speaker this particular week is a young priest by the name of Father Patrick Schultz. Wonderful young priest, just on fire with his faith. Just terrific. And he comes in. He says, I had my talk all planned, and it got changed. He said this week that the Spirit was moving, and that's not what I'm supposed to talk to you about. I'm supposed to talk to you about something else, so I'm going to deliver that talk, which is not directly related to marriages, but it's what I'm supposed to tell you. Okay. And what does he talk about?
Nazis.
He equates Jesus coming into this world 2,000 years ago with D-Day, World War II, Allied forces hitting the beaches at Normandy to liberate the French and ultimately all of Europe from the evil that was Hitler and the Nazis.
Why did the second person of the Trinity come? Why did he land? Why did he storm the beach of creation? To fight, to do the same thing that those soldiers did, to liberate a people. It is war. It is bloody. It's Jesus waging war on our behalf to fight and liberate us from an enemy that we couldn't fight on our own, to get his world back, to rescue us.
He is telling us the real reason Jesus came into the world 2,000 years ago, to do the same thing those soldiers did when they hit the beaches. Jesus came to get his world back, get his people back. He came to do war. He said, I didn't come here to give you peace. I came here to give you the sword. He came for war. He was born into this world to go to war for us.
1 John, listen to this. The reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the works of the devil. He came to destroy something. It's the beginning of a war. The only person in the whole Christmas story who really, really gets what's going on in Christmas is Herod, who responds with a military response. He slaughters in response to the coming king. That's who knows what Christmas is about. Put that on your Christmas card. See how many friends you got at New Year's.
Nice card. Who sent this? Jesus at war with the ruler of this world. But my favorite part of Father Patrick Schultz's talk was when he talked about the cross. And he called Jesus the greatest ambush predator ever.
Is he the victim or is he the aggressor? Is he the hunted or is he the hunter? Is something happening to him or is he doing something? And in the Passion, God is being unbelievably creative in a way that the enemy could never have foreseen. That the deceiver was deceived because he's hunting, he's allowing his prey, the enemy, sin and death, to draw audaciously close. He allows himself to be swallowed so that from inside death, he would explode it.
This 500 megaton hydrogen bomb known as Jesus just exploded in a complete surprise attack 2,000 years ago. D-Day, if you will. Now what? Well, as it says in the Bible, evil knows that its time is short. For the Nazis, they knew the war was over. It's just a matter of time. And sure enough, they just kept getting pushed back and pushed away. And that took about a year. It took about a year for that cleanup operation. Well, the ruler of this world also knows, as it says, that its time is short. Jesus, you'll notice, evil didn't just stop 2,000 years ago. No, we're part of redemption. We're part of the plan. We're in the B-52 bombers. For 2,000 years, 2,000 years, Christians have been picking up the cross and following Christ because Jesus said to do that. He says, you want to get to heaven? Enter through the narrow gate. So we enter through that Bombay door. There's your narrow gate, to be Christians, to follow Christ. And that has such an impact on the world. We are bombs falling. In our lifetime, we are affecting the influence of evil in this world. And when we die believers, what an impact crater we create. And then we're part of that heavenly army. 2,000 years of bombs that just keep falling. Are we having any effect whatsoever in this war, in this bloody war? You bet. On just the physical side of things, I don't know if he's still there or not, but the head of psychology at Harvard once did a story on violence in the world, historical violence, like thousands of years. He studied the violence over thousands of years. And he found out that right now, this is the most peaceful time the world has ever known. I know it doesn't seem like it, but he says, right now, the likelihood that any one of us is going to die at the hands of another human being is less now than ever before. So in that regard, by that measurement, it's the most peaceful time the world has ever known. But as Jesus said, don't worry about the person who's going to kill your body. Worry about the one who's going to kill your soul, your mind. And right now, isn't that where the battle is, over the minds? What was good is now considered evil. What was evil is now considered good. You see this battle over minds right now. But the Christians, we keep coming. We keep choosing that narrow gate. Through that narrow gate has never changed. What is good is good. What is evil. And Christians keep picking up their cross and following Christ. We are bombs. Now, when's this going to be over? When is this bloody war going to be over? Because God, it says right in the Bible there, He's promised us a new world, a beautiful new world with no sin, no temptation, just this beautiful, beautiful world. When is that coming? In Revelation chapter 6, it tells us. The martyrs of the world were crying out to God. They're going, wait, when are you going to get vengeance for all this blood? And God says, chill. It says right there, chill. Well, it says relax. But He says relax. There's a season for this. And there's a certain number of servants, of martyrs that still have to happen. And when that list is complete, when that number is complete, it's over. Then it's all over. And that's what we're doing right now by being bombs. And the war will be over. This bloody war will be over. Led by who?
This is the Christ. This is the King. This is Jesus. This is the General. This is the Lord. This is the one who rose up from the dead. This is the one who sits at the right hand of the Father. He bears the Father and is born by the Father, to whom be the glory and the power forever. We have been rescued. This is what we're hearing. We have been rescued.
We are rescued. Thank you, Father Patrick Schultz, young priest, just on fire with his faith. Just a great job. Great job. All right, what's our takeaway to this point? To this point in the podcast. You and I are bombs. What's a bomb's function? Only has one. To explode. To do just like Jesus did on the scene. To live the commandments. To follow Christ. To put God first. To love one another. To forgive. All those things a Christian's supposed to do. To put our faith into action. When we do that, we explode, we negate, we mute, we damage the evil that is in this world. When we die believers and become part of that heavenly army, we are exploding as bombs are supposed to do, because there is a war going on. Many of us, most of us, probably oblivious to that fact, but Christians just keep coming through that narrow gate, that steady stream, 2,000 years long now, of bombs pushing back the enemy. In a bit here, I'm going to tell you a story, a fascinating story talk about B-52s and bombs of World War II, about a man that became a canonized saint. And the power of God through him would not allow bombs to fall in his city. Bombing mission after bombing mission over his city. And God said, no, not one bomb is going to hit this town. That story is coming up here. But first, I want you to hear how this very same saint intervened in a woman's life here today and completely changed the life of Cindy Russo. I'm actually going to go back into the archives a little bit in an episode we did during the Blind Faith Live podcast.
You and I both have kind of similar backgrounds where, what would you call it? I call it I believe, but I didn't care. What do you call yours?
I call mine, please, please, Lord, when I needed him. Yeah. And then, who, Lord? When he answered my prayers. I think they call that a lukewarm Catholic.
Mm-hmm. God dragged you into all of this. It's cool.
Yes. This all happened in the fall of 2010. So we were going to Spain, France, and Italy on a cruise. And that's when my cousin Donna called and said to me, Cindy, please pray for my grandson Noah. He's 3 years old, and he was diagnosed with terminal cancer. They're giving him no hope, and that he probably will not be here by Christmas. And so anyhow, I said, Donna, please, let me do something. What can I do for you? She says, Cindy, we only need a miracle. So I said, why don't you give me pictures of Noah as he battles cancer? We will leave pictures all over Europe. We're going to go visit Spain, France, and Italy. We're going to leave the pictures at the church, and we're going to write at the back of them, please pray for Noah as he battles cancer. So that's what she did. She sent me pictures of Noah, and off to Italy we went.
Where did that come from? I mean, just that's an amazingly generous thing to even say. You're on vacation and you're carrying pictures into churches and dropping them off. Where does that come from?
Actually, I dreamt that. I dreamt it the night before I called her back and told her that.
What was the dream?
The dream was that I was supposed to put these pictures at these churches. God's been very good to me that I dream many, many solutions. I could go to bed with the question, and in the morning I have my answer.
Nice.
And so off we went. We started in Spain. Sometimes if I couldn't actually go into the church that we were going to see, I would give it to a stranger that was in line to go see the church, because we were on limited tours and, time restrictions wouldn't allow us to go in some of them. And so I would ask a stranger to please pray for Noah as he battles cancer, and place this either on the altar, light a candle, or just leave it in a pew so people all over the world will pray for him. And that's what we did.
So let's work our way to Rome. Rome, right? Trevi Fountain?
Trevi Fountain. Mm-hmm. Just like every tourist, we finally got to Rome. And like every tourist, we were at the Trevi and we had our coins. And of course, we threw the coins in. And when I looked right directly across from the Trevi, there was a church. It was called St. Vincenzo and Anastasio. I found out later that church was selected that many, many popes' hearts were buried in that church.
Wow. Well, there's a little sidebar for you. Let's pause on that one. Okay. So you're at the fountain, you leave your husband behind, and you take your picture in hand up to that church.
And up the steps I went, and it had this big black, kind of an oval entrance door. And with me as I walked up was a stranger to the left of me. And we opened this big black door. And when we got there to the foyer of the church, there stood a man. He was dressed in very dark robe, almost black, I would say. He had a robe. He had a beard. He had a rope around his waist.
Kind of like a monk, like we would think a monk would look.
Right. But I thought, okay, is this how the Italian priests dress? Because I've never seen anyone dressed like that before. And then he looked at the man to the left of me. And in the nastiest, the dirtiest look I've ever seen in my life, he kicked the man out of the church. And I thought...
In Italian, I assume. Right.
With his hands, too, to get out. And I thought, oh, my goodness, I should not be here. So I took a step back. And as I took a step back, the man looked at me in my eyes. And that's when it was all over. If you ask me what the church looked like after that, I couldn't tell you anything about the church. Because once he looked in my eyes, all of a sudden, from the floor, through my feet, through my legs, I felt this fire and this electricity go through me. And as it went up my body, they say when you die that all your whole life passes through you. And for me, it was every sad or bad thing I've done in my life. And it was all revealed to me. And I couldn't handle it. I just started to cry, and I could not stop crying. And when I looked up from these tears that were falling from my face, and I looked in that man's eyes again, I showed him Noah's picture. And I said, please, please pray for Noah. He is very, very sick. And the man grabbed my hands with the pitcher, and he walked me over to the back where there was a holy water fountain. And he took holy water, and he poured it over my head. Not a little, a lot. And being Italian and curly hair, you know where that's going. I looked like my hair had linguini spirals. And as he did this, he was blessing me, and he was speaking to me in Italian. And he blessed me 3 times, and then he blessed Noah's pitcher. I was crying profusely, and it couldn't even catch my breath when he took his hands, the tips of his fingers, and he wiped my cheeks, and he said, "No cry, Noah will be healed." And he said it in Italian, and I don't speak a lick of Italian, even though I am. And then he took the corners of his index fingers to the corners of my lips, and he made me smile. And he kept saying, "Smile, Noah would be healed." Then he walked over to a table and picked up a holy card. And at the time, I didn't even know that it was the Blessed Virgin Mary. It was called Madonna de Puzzo, which in English says Madonna at the well, Mary at the well. And he told me to pray this prayer every day. Noah would be healed. I bowed, I said grazia, and I ran out of the church. I ran down the steps to my husband at the fountain. And he saw me soaking wet. He thought I fell in the fountain. And I said, no. And he said, Cindy, the gypsies did this to you, because he thought the gypsies were going to come and steal me, which they wouldn't. And I said, no, it was this guy. I don't know who he was. I think he's a priest. That's how they dress in Italy. I don't know. But he did this to me. And my husband said, well, it's about time somebody got to you. So off we went back on our tour. About a half hour later, during the tour, we get a break. And most people go to have lunch. I love to shop. So we walked into a gift shop. And as we walked into the gift shop, I stopped. And I looked up. On the wall to the left of me was a picture. And my husband looked at me, and he said, Cindy, you just turned pure white, like you just saw a ghost. I said, honey, I didn't see a ghost. That's the guy who did this to me. And my husband chuckled. And he said, no, Cindy, no. I said, Joe, maybe he's like somebody famous in Italy. Maybe he's like a Monsignor or something. And my husband said, no, Cindy, he's dead. He's a saint. His name is Saint Padre Pio. I looked at my husband as though he was nuts, and I said, a saint? Joe, those things don't happen in this day and age. I'm not good. I'm not Bernadette. No way. And I didn't believe. So we walked out of the shop. The rest of the vacation, all I did was cry and cry and cry.
When you talked to Joe, I mean, Joe has been hoping that you would come to your faith, but he's seeing something that in a form that he, I'm sure, was surprised by.
He knew something had happened. Joe was on fire with his faith. He was a fourth-degree knight. He was a past faithful navigator. He had a state title. He just was on fire with his faith, as well as helping start Christ Renew, his parish here in the church, and starting rosary rallies. He would try to drag me all the time prior, and I would say, would you stop doing that? I don't want to be a church lady, was my famous comment. So Joe got it. He knew something happened to me. So I get home, and once I get home, my husband runs to the church and tells everybody. And I'm embarrassed by this because I really still don't believe. These things just don't happen. 5 days later, my mother gets ill and ends up at Marymount Hospital. I'm leaving the hospital about 10 o'clock at night, and I stop to say a prayer in their chapel. As I walk in, standing in front of the altar is a 3-foot statue of Padre Pio. Now, most people, that would have been very, very comforting. For myself, I ran out of there. I was spooked. I thought, this cat followed me home from Italy.
This cat followed me home. Okay.
So anyhow, I had a relative working there, and I grabbed her. She had heard the story, and I said, you got to come in here. My husband's going to really think I'm crazy. She said, Cindy, I've been here 11 years. There has never been a statue put in front of the altar, let alone of this saint. So all week, my mom was there, and relatives who came, we all prayed at the chapel. And on the
By the way, statue disappeared? Where happened to the statue?
Yeah, it disappeared.
Okay.
It disappeared the day we brought my mom home, and I received a call from the hospital asking me if I took the statue. And I said, no, I wouldn't do that.
So it suddenly appeared. It wasn't just appearing to you. It was there for the time that you were there and Mom was there.
And they asked the chaplain and the sisters if anybody put it there or took it away. And they said no. They had no idea why it was there. Wow. So the next day, my husband decided that I needed to go to get a statue of Padre Pio. We went to a shop, and of course they didn't have a statue, but they did have a book about Padre Pio. I should tell you, I really am not an avid reader, or used to be. Now I can't stop reading. So we brought the book home. It was by the author Ruffin, Ruffin, and it was over 500 pages. The first thing I read was that on September 23rd, 1968 is the day he died, and that is his feast day. That was the day I was in Rome during the encounter.
September 23rd.
The next thing I read was that Padre Pio's grandmother, on his mother's side, was a Gagliardi. My mom's family is the Gagliardi family.
That's the last name?
Yes.
Wow.
The next thing I read was that Padre Pio asked in the 60s to start prayer groups. The first woman he asked to become a prayer group leader, her name was Rachelina Russo. Coincidence?
Well, Cindy Russo, what do you think?
I felt like I opened this book of a mystery, this great mystery book. I read about a Bohm and a Mazzoni, which was my husband and my godmother's last names. It was just very coincidental. Did I still believe? Sort of, but not sure. Right. The next thing I did was I called my cousin Donna. And we know Padre Pio doesn't do the miracles, it's God, but he is an intercessor for Jesus. Mm-hmm. And that's really where the miracles happen. Noah's healed. My cousin called me a few weeks after I talked to her and said that her daughter got to go back to work. Noah's back in preschool, and the doctors do not understand, except we know. It was our faith. It was.
They say it just suddenly disappeared. What's the doctors?
There was no reason why he is alive. The cancer had gone through all of his organs, and there was no hope.
There are so many aspects of St. Padre Pio we could talk about. His devotion to the rosary. He
prayed, and they said his beads were always rolling. They said at least 32 rosaries a day, if not more. I truly have learned now that our lives are like the beads of the rosary, and we are all linked together by the chains. And sometimes we're in the sorrowful mysteries of our life. Sometimes we're in the luminous, the glorious. We are a living rosary.
I like that. You're right. Talk about the consecration, what you've read, things that would happen during consecration.
Oh, my goodness. His masses would last 2.5 hours, and he would experience truly the whole crucified Christ scenario, the whole scene. And his stigmata would bleed. And he suffered so much. He also suffered in the confessional. He had the gift of reading hearts. And he knew if you were sincere or not, or if you sort of forgot to mention those key sins and try to cover them, he would remind you. Some people he would completely kick right out of the confessional. And I think that kind of corresponds with what happened to me in Italy with that gentleman he kicked out of the church.
I also think that it's obvious that you were allowed to go through an examination of conscience.
Yes, I was.
We all need to be doing that on a moment-by-moment, certainly daily basis. And a beautiful reminder, isn't it?
And I should tell you that prior to that, I hadn't been to confession for 20 years.
Yeah. You had confession in a very powerful way.
And now I'm such a promoter. I can't tell you how many people that I've literally take by the hand and bring them to confession.
And this could go on, but do we have the key aspects of Cindy Russo being dragged into all of this?
Well, as I said, I am the least likely person to have received such a special gift. And if it wasn't for St. Pio and that encounter, I would have been in grave, grave trouble. He's a modern-day saint. Most of us were alive when he was around. Yeah. St. Pio's favorite words are pray, hope, and don't worry. And that's what I live.
Pray, hope, and don't worry. Words to live by. There's a good takeaway all by itself. Thank you, St. Padre Pio. And thank you, Cindy Russo, who has turned into a church lady and has started up Padre Pio prayer groups all over the place. Thanks again, Cindy. Now, I mentioned before the interview about a World War II story connected to all of this. And for every bombing mission in which the target was the town of San Giovanni Rotondo, which is where Padre Pio lived and served as a priest. Every bombing mission, it didn't matter who the pilot was, what country he was flying for, what faith he was, Catholic, Protestant, Greek Orthodox, Jewish, atheist, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. No mission was allowed to have their bombs fall on San Giovanni Rotondo. None of them. They all failed. Either the mechanism wouldn't work and the bomb bay doors wouldn't open, or the bombs fell on their own in an area that didn't hurt anybody. Or there was a general, I think he was an American general. He was so tired of hearing these stories, and here's what the story was. Every time a pilot and the crew would come near San Giovanni Rotondo to bomb German armaments or whatever, they all saw the same thing. A friar, a monk, a priest, in the sky with his hands up, turning the pilots away. Oh, and his hands were always wounded because Padre Pio had the wounds of Christ. He had the stigmata, so he had the nail wounds. This giant monk, friar, priest, whatever they would call him, would be turning them away. So anyway, these stories kept coming back, how they got turned away, how the bombs wouldn't fall, whatever the story was. This one American general, it said, got so upset by the whole thing that he went on a mission. He flew the mission. Same thing happened. Up comes the friar, and in his case, his bombs fell in a forest all by themselves. The bomb bay doors just opened when they were flying over a forest, boom, and so they had to turn and go back. But this just kept happening over and over and over again. One of the generals after the war went to San Giovanni Rotondo to find out who was this guy, because they heard that it was some really holy priest by the name of Padre Pio. He went to see who this Padre Pio was, and he walked into the church. There were a number of priests there, a number of people there, and Padre Pio was the one who, when he saw the general, walked up to him, put his hand on his shoulder, and said, you're the one trying to get rid of us all, and it was Padre Pio who just knew things. He just knew. But the whole story, the whole amazing, amazing story is in our email, so get the email by going to touchedbyheaven.net here at episode 68 and sign up for the email. Okay. What else could you do at episode 68 while you're there? Well, let's see. Well, you could click through to Patreon to be a financial supporter of us. That'd be awfully nice of you to do something like that. Did you hear what God just said? Is available to you now. The talk that is sweeping the nation is available at trapperjackspeaks.com. But there's a link there also at episode 68 to download Did You Hear What God Just Said? It's a compilation. It's all the talks that I've been doing recently in the last few months, all smushed together, and it is packed with stories, the stories that brought me back to God, back to the church, designed to fortify your faith or maybe to bring somebody back like all those stories brought me back. Did You Hear What God Just Said? Is available now through either that link there at episode 68, or you just go to trapperjackspeaks.com. All right. Thank you so much for listening to this episode 68 of Touched by Heaven. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next week. I am Trapper Jack for Touched by Heaven, everyday encounters with God.